Scott,
That's
thanks so much for
awesome,
joining us
man.
today, man. How you doing?
Good, man. How are you guys? I appreciate y'all having me on.
Oh, appreciate you taking the time to do this. I'm sure you're busy kind of ramping back up to get back on the golf course. We were just talking about that before we came on here, but what is now the status with the PGA Tour?
It's June 11th in Fort Worth, Texas at Colonial, the Charles Schwab Challenge. And it'll be very interesting. We were talking before you hit record as what all the stipulations. We all know that sports and in general are going to look a lot different. And it's going to look a lot different for us as well. So, but exciting to have an opportunity to play, and definitely look forward to get back out there.
And so you mentioned also before we started recording that this is your 10th year on the tour. Now, granted, over the lifespan of an athlete, strength and conditioning kind of takes, a different, I guess, a different role. But when you first started, what was fitness and strength and conditioning for you as a pro golfer in the early years of his career?
I remember one of my first workouts was a TRX, YSTs and Ws, some rotational mid-ball slams, and like single skip jump ropes. And I was wrecked. And now, I wouldn't necessarily, not that I'm uber fit or anything like that, but just it's amazing what the body can do. And now, that would be a glorified warm-up now. But I remember taking breaks in between, man, this is brutal, and crazy to see the difference.
When you first started your professional golf career, what did fitness look like at that point?
I mean, it was something that kind of was always in the back of your mind, I guess, but I don't know. At some point, everyone's going to try to do something to take care. You can't do as much repetitive motion as we deal with for as many weeks as we deal with, and not have something kind of break down. But it was more something that I did in off weeks, something to try to stay moving around. But by no means, diet, nutrition, health, and fitness were something that's kind of always there, but never a priority. And it's kind of more or less something I took for granted. And unfortunately, I had to learn some hard lessons there throughout the whole process.
For sure. And this is, I guess, more from me being an ignorant fan, I guess. Is that the kind of general sentiment that strength and conditioning takes on the tour as a whole? I mean, for every, you have your athletes like Tiger and Brooks Koepka, who looks, he's a meat wagon. But for every one of those, there's people that have memories of John Daly, lighting up a dart while he's in the tee box. And where do you feel like the needle is right now, at least tour-wide?
Yeah, the needle is way more towards whether someone tried it wrong or indifferent, everyone's doing something. And, their body and their version of fitness is a priority. And, just like in y'all sport, the margin of error is so small, and you got to do whatever you possibly can. And that's an area to make a big level of improvement. And everyone's doing something, and you go up and down the range. Even in my 10 years, the guys look way more athletic and, look like, all right, man, these guys, all right, this is different. And I can definitely tell a big difference, not only in myself and just my aesthetics and the transition that I've gone through, but just the tour in general from top to bottom. Everybody's doing something. And, you have the ultra cardio guys, like the bikers and the runners. Then you have the more power lifter guys. And then you have whatever I do, which is kind of in the middle of it all. And, I think, everyone's doing something and trying to figure out what that looks like.
You went to college with Rich Froning. Did you know him when the two of you were there at the same time?
No, we knew each other after the fact. We kind of always knew of each other. And we actually met, the first time I worked out at his house, I met Josh Bridges in my underwear in Rich's kitchen. So I went and worked out at Rich's house, and he said, I'll just go run and change inside. And I had no idea that anyone was in there. I was like, well, no one's in here. I just started changing right in the middle. And Bridges came walking around with some food, and I'm just standing there in my underwear, and he's like, who are you? I'm like, who are you? And he's like, I'm a guy just trying to eat my lunch, and I walk over and see some guy saying his underwear. Just something that you don't normally see, but that was a long time ago now, and Josh has become a good friend, and just amazing the opportunities of being friends with Rich, and the kind of some transition that he's kind of helped me make in my life, and having access to him, and just the doors that relationship has opened up has been pretty incredible. But that was the first time I met Josh, and we laugh about it today.
Man, that
I was yeah. we played in yeah, man. I'll never forget that. Yeah, I played in San Diego, and we trained at Josh's house a few times over the last few years while I've been there. And we were talking about it when I got done playing Sunday afternoon. I was taking a red-eye flight, so I went to his house and we trained, and we just started talking about, like, man, who'd have thought, like, however many years ago, just standing in your underwear at 250 pounds and walking out, and then next thing you know, we're doing these, I don't know what kind of intervals we were doing at his house at 9 o'clock at night before I'm getting ready to go catch this red eye. And it's just crazy when you take a little bit of ownership and put some good people around you to help make some good decisions. You take care of your body, it's going to take care of you.
And to touch on that a little bit, what are some of the changes that that you can look back on and see that maybe Rich and some of the relationships you've built through this ecosystem will kind of help you make, whether it's how you eat, whether what you do for training, and anything like that?
All right, so I remember specifically is like December 18th of 2017. Rich sent me a text. He's like, "Hey man, I just started a diet. I think you should give this a try." I'm like, "Man, if you're on a diet, I definitely need to be on a diet." And he started working with the RP Strength guys out of Charlotte, Nick Shaw and his team, which have been great. And I touched base with Nick, and he got me in touch with one of the coaches that was a little bit closer to me. And I started January 7th of 2018. I was 232 pounds and 26%. And again, going back to my underwear, I don't really know how this conversation started, but when you have to send a picture to a complete stranger every Monday morning for 52 weeks of standing in your underwear and your body weight, you're going to get it dialed in pretty quick. And I don't know if that's the overall goal from a peer pressure standpoint or anything, but man, I couldn't tell you who Christian Carter was if I saw him in person. I never met him, but we've done FaceTimes and different things like that. But every single Monday morning, no matter where I was, he was my check-in. And I mean, just a huge asset to have, to learn how to travel, learn how to, plan your day out from the beginning, and, understanding input and output, and no day's the same. And I remember he said that he made more diet templates for me than he's made for any athlete, just because I had to go over what my week looked like at a tournament. And he's like, you don't have a single day that's the same. I was like, no, not a single day is the same. He's like, all right. So it took him a while, and man, it made a huge impact. And, everyone jokes that abs are made in the kitchen, and that's 100%. You can't outwork a bad diet. And, that was kind of getting a foundational understanding of how to do all those things. And it was incredible the difference it made. And, a huge advocate for those guys. But that all started from a text from Rich telling me he was on a diet. And I was like, okay, this guy, I probably need to get a better idea of what I'm doing.
You won your third tour title at Torrey Pines, and that was in 2014. But then you went on to miss 13 cuts in your next 22 starts. And your best finish, I think, in that span was a tie for 32nd. So physically, what was going on with you at that point in your career?
That was kind of I had some early success. It was the highest I've ever been ranked in the world. And, the idea of increasing fitness and like longevity. I mean, I was 20, how old am I now? So I was 28 years old, and you never really start looking at it. It's like, all right, I'm getting ready to get in a different part of my career. Like, what does that look like? So I started asking some questions, kind of dipping my toe into what fitness looked like for me. And then just started to kind of peel back some layers of, bad decision-making, just no due diligence for my body and everything, and just kind of the wear and tear that was taking place. And it just kind of all culminated at the end of 2014, and kind of the beginning of 2015. And man, to be honest, the best way to describe it is I just felt awful all the time. And, sleeping, super fatigued, get done playing and practicing and just go straight to bed. And, it was no life for anyone, but especially you're trying to play against the best players in the world. And, 2015 was a huge year for me to try to figure out what was going on. Golf wasn't necessarily a huge priority. I was still trying to play and compete, but literally trying to figure out what was the best version of myself. And it was diet, this and that, and ended up in a bunch of doctor's offices and a bunch of scary appointments and some scary conversations. And ultimately it came down to a bunch of little things that all happened at once, and ended up having complete sinus reconstruction surgery. I broke my nose a couple times as a kid and kind of had the redneck, like, get back out there and play. And it's just, just ended up, I had an obstructive sleep apnea and a bunch of other problems with sinus, I had a bunch of sinus infections and crazy. My VO2 with just from the sinus surgery went up 20 points.
Wow.
Just by the ability to breathe. And by no means I was anywhere near the shape that I'm in now, but I remember doing my VO2 before, and I mean, barely making it into that, like, the third cycle, as far as to try to, when you ramp it up, and just dying a slow death almost on that treadmill. And then basically having the surgery and a couple of days of training and kind of getting back into it and just seeing the immediate impact of what it made and the ability to breathe. And, people kind of take for granted what that does and how that affects your sleep and recovery and kind of everything that you go about. And then it kind of all took on from there. It was a little bit better in this area, a little bit better in this area, a little bit better in this. And then slowly but surely kind of transitioning into what it is now.
And I'm curious, because I think we talk to a lot of people that are at various points of their fitness journey, but the overwhelming thing that is kind of the common thought is that first step in making those improvements is really important. And it is usually the biggest step for a lot of these people. What was the first step that you took, and how were you able to kind of keep that momentum going?
Literally find people that were way smarter than me and that were trying the best in the world. And just like I say in what I do for a living, the moment that you think you got it all figured out, you don't have anything figured out. Like, even though I play on the best tour in the world, we're one of the best players in the world, I'm constantly trying to learn. I did Matt Frazier's podcast and Matt O'Keefe's last week, and we just started talking about that. I was like, Matt, you're the fittest guy in the world. Like, you have that title, and you're constantly trying to learn and figure out ways to get better. And he's like, yeah, you are. Because if you, like, you can't stagnate out and kind of get to the point, it's like, oh, I'm good enough now. No, I got to try to figure out a way to get better. And that was my goal from the beginning. It's like, I know nothing, so I'm going to try to find the people that are the best and try to learn from them. So whether that was Rich, whether that was, an assortment of, health professionals, or, just different people I train with and have the opportunity to come in contact with, and constantly try to pick their brain and figure that out. But I think the biggest mistake that most people make is they try to, like, make it way too complex and just daunting. Like, I'm going to sleep better, I'm going to eat better, I'm going to train, I'm going to do this, I'm going to just make this complete overhaul. And man, that's just not sustainable. And, you get the burnout level is so high. And I just think that, make one small improvement and build off of that. You read any of those Atomic Habits or, 10,000 hours or anything like that, it takes 14 days to build and make it something a habit. And I always say, make one small decision each day and build off of that, and then make another one the next day, another one the next day. Next thing you know, you've made a radical life change, and it's just been in a matter of weeks, just by prioritizing something a little bit different. And that's kind of the approach that I took.
I read that you used to drink about 15 sodas per day.
Maybe, honestly, maybe more.
Wow. So how did your relationship and perception of food then change once you started working out?
Oh man, so one of my best friends, he's my PT on tour, works with a bunch of guys on tour in a bunch of different professional sports, named Adam Curley. And one of my, he's the guy I train with, and, takes care of me, and he's been a huge part of this whole process. I remember the first time we started training, the goal was the amount of soda I was going to drink before we trained compared to after. I mean, that, like, now if you told me that was going to be part of our conversation, I'm like, you're nuts, man. Like, I could maybe joke the amount of coffee I'm going to drink or something like that before, but not like Dr. Pepper, like driving to the gym. And that was my drink of choice. I probably haven't had one in at least 4, maybe not 5 years, but that was my thing. And you know, one of the habits that I had to kind of get rid of. And but those were the conversations in the beginning. Now I feel like Adam's trying to figure out a way to get me out of the gym. So it's amazing how the relationship has changed.
And so now, as we always have to ask anyone, is how did you find CrossFit, and what was that first experience like?
One of the first CrossFit workouts that I ever did, I'd started slowly but surely kind of getting into like a little bit of kettlebell stuff, and I did like Helen, and I slowly, but I figured out that these women's names, I said, I don't know who these women are, but they were mad at somebody because these are brutal. And I had maybe done like 10 wall balls in my life, and everyone's like, all right, let's do Karen. Like, who's that? Like, I had no idea who the nasty girls were, all these, crazy names. And I never, like, Fran destroyed me. I was doing pull-ups with like every band in the gym to try to get finished. And I was like, they were like, oh, you broke 10 minutes. I'm like, oh, that's really good, right? And it was like, no, a guy can do it in 2 minutes. I'm like, what? But the idea of a lot of what we do with my job, the days are very similar in terms of practice and playing, and to be honest, can become a little bit monotonous. And you try to be creative in this, but ultimately, man, you drive it in the fairway, you hit it on the green, you try to make birdies, you try to eliminate mistakes, and it's fairly simple. But trying to come up with new ways and be creative is a process. So the idea that you could take a same workout and do it 7 different ways and create just a completely different feeling, from on the minute to an AMRAP to a total for time, just all the different ways to vary an exercise. And I was like, all right, I'm in on this. Like, I can go and have a 6-8 hour practice day and go and do something for 25 minutes and literally hate life, and then walk out 15 minutes later, it's like, that was awesome. And that was the mindset as far as what kind of clicked for me. And constantly trying to figure out ways to vary it up and just make it super interesting. And got some pretty unique training partners I've been training with over the quarantine. And we walk into the gym, it's like, all right, what are you guys doing today? And just different ways as far as panning out. It's like, oh, it's the same workout. I was like, no, it's not. And it's a completely different outcome. And I like the idea of being able to just constantly vary, just like the motto states, and, kind of constantly keep your body guessing. And golf is pretty counterintuitive to my personality. I kind of keep the patience and almost like laid back for when I go out there and play. But, an opportunity to get in there and, push the pedal down a little bit, I enjoy that a lot. We don't get a chance to do that very often in what I do for a living.
You mentioned this a little bit, but how did being a professional golfer and working on things as meticulous as a swing over and over and over again help you when you got into the gym and were trying to improve your fitness?
I think a lot. That's the biggest question. I did another podcast a week or so ago. It was a golf podcast, but it was trying to emphasize on the fitness side. And he's like, well, I see all these problems and injuries and basically all the negative narrative you hear about CrossFit in general. And I said, man, at some point you have to realize that there are things that I do in my life that aren't all about what I do for a living. You have to have an escape. You have to have a way to get away. And, especially this is my 13th year as a pro and 10 straight years on tour. I mean, that's just a lot to deal with from a mental side and everything. So why there's a physical and aesthetics and, lifestyle that affects from fitness, it's way more of a mental thing for me, just to kind of get out of my own head and just deal with some suffering. And I think that when you go into the mentality, I'm going to do this is going to be brutal, but I'm going to come out better on the other side. Like, man, there's a lot of power in that. And you go like, I got to go hit balls after this. I got to go practice. Like, that's easy. And it's a kind of a mental refresh and to be able to kind of handle it from there. But it was definitely a huge learning process. I'm continually trying to learn as much as I possibly can from anyone. So if y'all have any tips, throw them out there. I'll take them all.
Well, to kind of touch on what you said just a second there, I mean, from the outsider perspective, it's really hard to kind of grasp what the physical demands of being a pro golfer are. Can you touch on what, I guess, the physical demands of maybe like a weekend tournament, and then kind of the totality of what it's like to play year-round on tour? Because, I mean, speaking from experience, I don't even know how many tournaments you play a year, and what does that exactly look like?
Yeah, Frazier was like, for real? You play that many? I was like, yeah, man. My rookie year, I slept in my bed 37 days.
Wow.
Whoa.
And so last year, I was on the road for the PGA Tour 29 weeks, and I had a couple ancillary weeks where I played some different events across different tours and playing and traveling and practicing and everything. But the tour, we have the same length of season as NASCAR. So there's 49 events throughout the course of the year. There's a couple weeks where there's multiple, but we have a very short off season, kind of like a 4-week and a 6-week. So trying to compartmentalize like training cycles and periodization and how that works, like that's out of the window, man. You got to make do with what you can throughout the course of a very long season. So you'll get a good plan in place and kind of figuring out how all that stuff works, training load, practice load, tournament rounds, and kind of how all that builds up. I mean, there's so many different things to take into account. And man, you got to have a really good team around you to kind of help make those decisions, which I'm very fortunate to have. And it's been a very cool experience to kind of see the transition, how it's just affected the longevity of my career and kind of what we take into account day in, day out on tour.
We hear the term, and Josh Bridges says this a lot, pay the man in CrossFit. Why did those 3 words resonate with you so much?
Well, it all came back from him. And there's the very first day I ever worked out at his house there in Chula Vista, California, at his paint garage. And we went, and he's like, "You ready to pay the man?" I was like, "I'm not paying you any money." Like, I had no idea what any of this meant.
It's for the underwear incident.
It's like I just thought, I kind of thought he was trying to like big time me, like, "Oh, you're a big CrossFit guy, like you're gonna pay me to work out." And I'm like, "All right, I'm out." Like, what's the deal with this guy? And he's like, "No, man." And he started trying to explain it, and how it based off the it's rinse do every day. I was like, all right, I resonate with that, and I was immediately hooked. And we started adapting it, and he just kind of explained his mentality as far as coming from a SEAL background, then training high level CrossFit and the games and kind of what that looks like. I was like, I am in on this. And started to adapt into what things that I have control over. Golf's a very unique sport, and where you can do everything right and still get a bad result. So there's a lot of variables that you can't control. So focusing on what you can. And so like where I've adapted to pay the man is, the same mentality, but you have 2 things you can control every single day: your attitude and your effort, and rinse do on both every single day. Like what you did the day before, what you're doing in the future. Like I have control of those 2 things, and that will determine the outcome of my day, just on how I deal with whatever comes. And I think it's pretty telling to see how a lot of people react when sports come back, because there's going to be a lot of things that you used to be able to control that you can't now. So just adapt and overcome and deal with it. I by no means have a military background, but I resonate a lot with the mentality of how those guys just deal with anything and embrace suffering. And it was a very cool conversation, but it started off very rough. I truly thought I was trying to get big time by, big time CrossFitter. And little did I know it kind of became somewhat of a life quote that I think about every single day when I wake up. And so I appreciate Josh for that, and him not just punching me right in the face as soon as I was just like, "What are you talking about?"
And you have that embroidered someplace on your golf bag, don't you? Pay the man.
Yeah, I have them all. I have them on my bag. I have them on my wedges. I have Rich. I built a gym in my backyard, and kind of like a barn kind of area similar to him. And he helped me kind of come up with some of the equipment. Him and Dan Bailey with Rogue were a big helper with figuring out how to utilize the space. And they've been in more gyms than any person I know. So I was like, "What would you guys do?" They're like, "We would do this." It's like, perfect. I'm gonna do that. And so I had it. I have a friend of mine that has basically graphic design company, and we used a huge, basically like a wall printer, and ran some hardwood through it and built a frame into the wall. There's a big Tennessee flag, and rent is due, pay the man. So see it every day when you walk into the gym, and whether you feel like being there or not, you take a couple looks at that. And I've got some kind of some stoic quotes, some Ryan Holiday, and some stuff in there where you're sitting there feeling like you're about to yak, and like why did I enter this place today? And you look up, like Marcus Aurelius is talking to you, or Socrates is talking to you, like, hey man, let's not even go in that headspace. Let's get through it and deal with it and come out better on the other side. So it's been a pretty cool spot, and very fortunate to have it. And those guys have been big helps all the way through.
Awesome. Some would say they're good dudes.
They are good dudes. Yeah.
Yes.
And so there are so many other secondary and tertiary benefits to CrossFit, the training, the mentality, all the things that you've touched on there. So in what ways has that kind of helped you as a pro golfer, and kind of maybe made adjustments to your game or how you approach the sport and what you do?
A little, just I touched on in the beginning, the mental aspect as far as just get rid of it, but also just handling the long days. And my body is so much more resilient to just dealing with whatever kind of comes. And by no means like I'm invincible by any means. There's still a lot of work that goes into it, but just handling everything that we don't have control over, from the travel to the playing to the practicing, and just building some resilience. And I think a lot of people, I have some of my friends that come out and travel and go for like a week. It's like, you do this every week? I'm like, yeah, this is my job. It's like, I'm exhausted. And I think, but that becomes your normal. You hear the guys in the games all the time. It's like, work out 6 hours a day, a 9-minute max effort workout twice a day. Like, that's nothing to me. And, that's that when you base it off what their normal is, that's, they can go out there and hammer down for 2 or 3 workouts a day. And it's amazing the output that they can put out. But when you put on there what their baseline day is, that's nothing. Mm-hmm. And I think the same thing goes along, like, by increasing my fitness level and just what my body's capable of, my baseline is so much different, and I'm able to sustain way more, output, whether that's practicing, training, recovery, and go from there. When I was at Josh's house, he's big sauna, kind of contrast recovery. And we did a 20-minute barrel sauna and 1 minute 32-degree ice bath. I have no idea how long we were in there. It seemed probably like an hour. And we're just in there just having it out. He's like, man, we're going to train hard. We're going to recovery hard. I was like, I'm in. Like, let's figure all this out. And, as much, time and attention you do the training and the mobility and everything that goes into that, the recovery aspect is just as important.
What kind of reaction are you getting from your fellow PGA Tour players who have seen you, go from weighing 250 pounds to now, shedding almost 60 pounds and completely transforming your appearance?
Yeah, you get the jokes. Oh, you did this or you did that, or and a lot of people's like, "What's the secret? What's the secret? What's the secret?" It's like, man, it's about taking ownership. You only get one body. You only get one shot at this, and you need to be the best steward over it you possibly can be. And I'm not trying to be cliche or happy-go-lucky, but I mean, that's just the truth. And I think a lot of people are looking for that quick fix, or, hey, give me this and let me do that for a month and I'll be the best there is. Like, no, because you're going to wake up the next day and you're going to have the opportunity to get even better. And I hate when people put timelines on it. I think that's why CrossFit definitely resonates from a mentality standpoint. It's not a timeline thing. It's a lifestyle. It's a, hey, I'm gonna be really good today, but I'm gonna be better tomorrow, and then I'm gonna be better the next day. I'm gonna be better, and continually trying to push the envelope as far as what's going on, and all that stuff resonates. But the comments are pretty funny, especially seeing some of the transitions. But I told a story. Players was the last tournament that we played before we got canceled in March, and we had a guy that was the starter, the guy that calls your name and you go play. And he had sent me a message on Instagram as, hey, I called your name the year before and I didn't recognize you. And you came up and you basically told me the same thing. You make one better decision, you build off of it. He said, I want to take a picture with this year. I've thought about that every day. I've lost 50 pounds. It's like, that kind of response, like, man, I want to get my story out there. I want to hopefully make people like be the intermediary so they don't make the same mistakes that I did. And, be a good steward of what you have and the opportunity you have just to live your life to the fullest instead of be stagnant and, constantly wanting and continually try to push yourself to be better. But stuff like that, it's like, I was blown away. Especially, I remember him speaking to me, and then and same thing, I didn't recognize him, and just a cool opportunity to kind of culminate it all together. So those kind of reactions are super cool, and hopefully I have a lot more opportunities to do those down the road.
Yeah, you kind of, that last sentence was kind of my next question. I do feel like, and we've kind of seen this firsthand, that training like CrossFit is starting to slowly seep into the fabric of pop culture and society more and more, whether it's, you're seeing it, people joke about it on national television, or The Simpsons make a reference and all these other things. But do you feel like there's maybe a little bit more interest in what you're doing from other people on the tour, whether it's the guy that calls your name, or judges or players or anyone that's involved?
Yeah, I've had a chance to train with all, whether it's volunteers or other players in tournament, or, hey man, just give me a glimpse of what it looks like. And I mean, I would say that a culmination of all my fitness involves probably 90% of everything that goes into CrossFit. I don't bar snatch. I don't handstand push up. I don't muscle up. And just for the risk. And in all honesty, I can recruit strength in those areas without even putting myself at risk. Like, I can dumbbell snatch. I can do all these other things to, scale in that way, and still, with the integrity of the workout and the movements, but still protect myself from the fact that this is not my job. And that was brought to my attention very quickly by Rich. I said, man, what if you were me, what would you avoid? He's like, if I ever see you bar snatch, like, I'm going to call you out in front of everyone I know on social media. It's like, all right, I won't do that. but I think just different things, like everyone, if you Google golf and all you see is Tiger, and you're like, all right, I can't do that, I don't want to play. Just like if you Google CrossFit and all you see is Rich and Matt and Tia and all these super, super fit people, like, you don't see the people that work out at one of the gyms that I go to, the moms group that, like, one lady's 76 in there and she's just crushing it every day. I mean, she scales the warm up, but she's in there, man. And just the variability of how we can all go in there and push each other to get better. And taking some people through some, like, just pure body weight workout, don't even mention CrossFit. And like, man, you did every minute on the minute scaling down, or, like a death by squats, or, some kind of workout like that. Like, oh, that was great, man. Where'd you get that? It was like, that's one of the CrossFit base workouts. Like, huh? Everyone just sees people at the highest level and they immediately, like, check out because, oh, that looks difficult, or, oh, that looks really hard, or, oh, that guy's the best in the world. Like, people don't see, like, your average median guy that's a 9-to-5er and goes and, crushes it after work and, goes home and plays with his kids. And, people don't see that aspect of it. And just like in golf, like, I mean, the 1% of the 1% in the professional golf world, plays the PGA Tour. There's 150 guys in the world that have my job. And you can't compare typical golf to what we deal with on a day-to-day basis, just like you couldn't compare fitness to those guys.
I'm curious, Scott, what do you think your career would be like right now had you not made a change in your lifestyle?
I have no idea. I got asked that question last week in another podcast. And what do you think you'd be doing? And it would be hard pressed to imagine playing professional golf. Just the strike that's going, and not to be like melodramatic or, but I mean, there were some scary doctor's appointments. I was with a guy at UCLA in 2015, and he said, man, if you're in my office, there's an opportunity I'm going to tell you have something that can't be cured. And, like, I was 29 years old and looking at him like, you're nuts, man. And I mean, I was very fortunate and, to be, have some people kind of intercede for me. And I think that, the gym became the escape. That was through that whole transition. That was kind of the only time of day I felt good, had some adrenal stuff that, just imagine, like, the alternator in your car is going out, but you have to merge on the highway. Your alternator is going to work when you cram on the gas, or your car's going to blow up. That was the same way I felt. Like, if I put the hammer down, I felt great. And then I was just kind of puttering out the rest of the day. So the gym was kind of where I went to. And, thankfully, I don't know what I would be doing, probably not playing on the PGA Tour, but very, very thankful for the opportunity we have to play, and, happy to be where I am today for sure.
I got a couple fun questions that I'm curious about.
Perfect.
What's your favorite course and your favorite tournament, if those are different things? And the last one is, what was your favorite moment from your career on tour so far?
My favorite tournament is Memorial. It's in Dublin, Ohio. And very nice that Rogue is there. It was very cool to be able to train at their employee gym all week. And we did Murph there because that's the same Memorial Day weekend.
Yeah.
And I was probably outside of Santa Cruz, that's probably one of the only places on earth where you see people running down the road in, weight vests, and no one's like, oh, that's totally normal. Like, I ran down my road with a weight vest on, and I think like someone thought I was like in the army or something. Like why is this guy wearing, like, they see the vest and they immediately think something bad. It's like, oh, that guy's just training. And we were doing Murph at Rogue, and like everyone's like, oh, how'd it go? It was like just totally different experience. But that's my favorite event. Favorite course is hard. I've kind of narrowed it down to 5. Any place out west, Torrey, Pebble, Riviera, all amazing. Muirfield and Memorial, probably my top one on both. And my favorite moment in my career is when I won in 2014, and my son had just started to learn how to walk. And he came out on the green like when I won, and I'll never forget that. He says he remembers it. He was like just over a year. It's like, you don't remember that, but he's seen so many pictures and the videos. Like, that was me. So that was definitely an experience I never forget.
Epic.
Well, Scott, listen, man, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. We really appreciate it, and you sharing your story with us. And best of luck getting back out on the golf course, and hope to see you lifting some hardware again here pretty soon.
Yeah, if you ever come out to Pebble,
let us know.
Hit us up.
We'll be in your gallery.
We'll get a training. We'll get a training session in. Maybe go train at the ranch in Aromas.
Yeah.
Throw down.
Hey, I would love it, man. I'm great. I did a fit aid thing with some guys out there, Aaron and Orion, when we were out there at Pebble this year. But definitely love to get the whole tour and kind of meet some more faces and go in there. But y'all, we'll be back there in February, so go ahead and plan it. I'm ready to get after it.
All right, man. We will put that on the calendar. That'd be great. And then you can take us out to the driving range and see how badly we hit a golf ball.
Yes, I'll take. I was telling Tia, we did some Noble stuff not too long ago. I was like, I will trade golf for training any day you guys want. I will happily help you guys with golf. You help me with training. I've given up trying to help Rich. He is awful, awful. And he won't listen to anyone.
You found the one thing that is awful.
Well, it used to be swimming, but yeah, you're gonna don't have a big meal before you take me out on the golf course, because you might throw up in your mouth. So
I have a hole in one in my bag.
You got that. So
I got that.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Well, I appreciate it, guys, and thanks for having me on, and look forward to getting together there at Pebble, and we'll get in the gym and get on the course and have a good time, man.
All right. God, thanks so much. We really appreciate it.